Welcome to the Academic Podcast Series, where we unpack, question, and make sense of research in English language teaching and learning. I'm Alex, and this is E. We are currently Ph.D. candidates majoring in English language study, and we're delighted to be here to take a closer look at the research article entitled The Construal of English as a Global Language in Korean EFL Textbook for Primary School Children by Sun Jung Joo. If you are interested in working with young learners and designing your own learning materials to work with them, this episode is for you. So, have you ever worked with children before? What was it like?
Actually, I don't have many experiences working with children because most of the time I work with young teenagers and adults. I'm now having a tutoring class with two children studying at secondary school, one at grade 6 and one at grade 8. So one of my most positive experiences is how receptive and impressionable they are. So they adapt to new knowledge much faster than adults, and they are so curious and they ask questions I've never even thought of. So they are also good listeners and also great practitioners. One of the things I really appreciate is that when they will always ask for clarification if they don't understand something, which makes the learning process very clear. So this experience made me think that the children absorb everything so much easier than adults, and they learn what they are taught. So they have to be really careful with the content I want to deliver as well as what I tell them during the lessons. Even just for fun, but because they remember whatever I say. So what about you, Alex?
For me, one of my most negative experience when I had an opportunity to work with them was the children really enjoy something colorful and they just didn't pay much attention to the characters in the textbook. So I don't think that the hinted messages in those textbooks are too crucial for them. So when we are teaching children, which factors do you think engage them in the learning process?
Well, there are a lot of factors affecting the learning process that the teachers have to control to engage the students into the lessons, like teaching pedagogy, interest, fun activities, but their impact is severely limited if the teaching materials themselves aren't good enough. As I said, children absorb the knowledge along the way we provided, so textbooks with good content, relevant engaging dialogue, and colorful visually engaging pictures are indispensable.
Yeah, I do agree with you on that. And I think there is a huge investment in the development of EFL teaching materials for children.
So let's talk about it. Today, we're opening up some grade 3 English textbooks from South Korea to look at something that, is very fascinating and honestly doesn't quite it up.
That's right. And for anyone who doesn't know the content here, Korea has this huge national focus on English is often called English fever.
Right.
And mastering a language is seen as, just absolutely vital for a country to succeed in the global economy. It's a massive deal.
Because it's such a high priority, the official school curriculum has been trying for years to reflect a more modern, global idea of English. So there's this official mandate started back in 2007 that says English should be presented as an important bridge connecting different countries. The goal is to build trust among various countries and cultures. It says brave, very progressive.
It's a really great goal, on paper. But here's what this deep dive is all about. We're looking at a study that analyzed 5 government-approved primary school textbooks.
And specifically for grade 3, right? It's because that's when English becomes mandatory. For kids who are 8 or 9 years old?
Exactly. And at the age, the books are really heavy on images and characters interactions. The researchers call them multimodal resources?
So the question the study asked was pretty simple. Do the pictures actually support this big, progressive, global goal?
And we're just going to get straight to the surprising answer. The study found a real conflict. Despite the official policies, the analysis showed this powerful and kind persistent Western bias.
And it also supports something called native speakerism.
Yes, implicitly. So you have these progressive policies, but it's being well, sort of determined by pictures and the visual habits in these books.
That's like an ideological fight happening with cartoons, which is, incredibly powerful when the audience is 8 years old.
So let's define that term you just used, native speakerism. What exactly does that mean for you? Say, English language teaching? Simply put, native speakerism is this idea, and it's everywhere, that English is kind of at its best when it comes from a native speaker.
So who's usually what? Whites and from a Western country?
Typically, yes.
Yeah.
It's a belief system that puts those people and their cultures at the very top of the pyramid when it comes to linguistic authority. It suggests that, if you're not from that group, you can really master or teach English to the same high standard.
Just feels so outdated today. And to give some structure, the researchers use a framework called gratitude model of a word Englishes.
Right, Gratitude's model is it's basically 3 circles, one inside the other, that map out linguistic power. In the center, you have the inner circle.
Some countries like the US, UK, Canada, Australia.
Exactly. And they are seen as norm-providing. They set the rules for the language.
And that's the circle that native speakerism is built on, correct?
100%. Then moving out, you have the outer circle. These are places like India or Singapore or Nigeria. English isn't a native language, but it plays a big institutional role in government, in schools.
So you consider non-developing, they adapt the rules.
They adapt the rules, yeah. And then finally, you have the biggest circle, the expanding circle. This is where you find English as the French language learner, like the kids in Korea.
Okay.
And they've historically been seen as, non-dependent.
Dependent on the inner circle for honestness.
Right. But here's the massive global reality check that just completely flipped this whole hierarchy on its head.
Okay.
The source materials really drive this home. English just doesn't belong to those inner circle nation anymore.
This is that things change every single textbook. Non-native English speakers are estimated to outnumber native speakers by a factor of 3 to 1.
3 to 1? I mean, just think about that. The majority of conversation in English are happening around the world right now, in business, online, wherever.
So they don't involve a native speaker at all.
Not at all. The so-called non-standards are now the tiny minorities in how their own language is being used globally. The whole landscape has shifted. But as we are about to see, the pictures in these books seem to be stuck in a few decades in the past.
Okay, so let's dig into the actual analysis, because this is where you can really see the conflict in action. The researchers use a method, it's a bit of a mouthful, critical mental model content analysis.
Yeah, it sounds complicated, but it just means they just count words. They look at who was in the pictures, what they were doing, and crucially, what kind of power they seem to have.
They looked at a lot of characters. I think it was like 513 human characters in total.
That's right, across 10 units.
Yeah.
And at first, they found something that looked pretty good. There was an attempt at diversity. The books had characters from 15 different identifiable nationalities.
Wait, 15 nationalities?
That's actually sound pretty diverse. Well, isn't that good enough? Is the study just being a bit too harsh here? I mean, if you got characters from India and Thailand, isn't that fulfilling the mandate? That is the perfect questions, and the answer is all in context, not just the head count. They have diverse characters, but they don't give them active, competent roles.
Oh.
When they look beyond just counting faces and analyze how these characters actually use English, it all kind of fell apart. It boiled down to 2 big types of exclusion.
Tell us about the first one. How are they kept out learning itself?
Well, it was an exclusion from learning. Characters from the outer circle like India or expanding circle like Thailand were just constantly left out of the actual learning situation.
So they are the ones practicing dialogues with the current student?
Never. They might be in the book somewhere, but they aren't the ones sitting in a cafe, ordering coffee or asking for direction with the main character, the Korean kids. They're on the sidelines.
So it means that they exist in the book, but they are not shown as someone you want to practice your English with.
Precisely. And the second type of conclusion was the authority. The researchers look for characters who have some kind of institutional role, a teacher, a tour guide, an instructor.
Oh, let me guess.
Characters from the outer or expanding circle were never, not once, shown in one of these positions of authority.
Wow, that sends a powerful message to a kid, isn't it? Only people who can teach you or guide you to have a look a certain way or come from a certain place. So who was in charge?
Well, you see Korean characters in those roles, which is good. But the huge majority is about 70%, that's 14 out of 19, of those authoritatively roles were taken by either Korean characters or by his other really important group, the study called the unclear inner group.
The unclear inner group. Okay, so this is where the visual bias gets really subtle because the book creators didn't even pick a country, they just picked a look.
Exactly, and this was the simple biggest group of characters in the whole study. It was 38.4% of all of them. There's basically a visual shortcut.
So what does it look like?
They're characters who consistently look stereotypically Caucasians, blonde hair, fair skin, and they often have generic Western sounding names like Johns or Smith, even though no specific country is ever mentioned. They're just Western.
And these Western-looking characters just dominate the page. They were in over 61% of all the images they analyzed.
They're everywhere, but the real kicker, the thing that really hammers home that native speakers' message go back to the actual learning.
The communicative event.
Yeah. When it comes to those moments designed to actually teach kids how to use English, these named Caucasian look figures was presented as the ideal person to talk in more than 70% of those interactions.
70%. So that's 112 out of 157 of those key moments.
The message is overwhelming. If you're an 8-year-old Korean student, the visual lesson is that the best person to practice English with. The person with the authority and the person you see most often is always white and Western looking, even if you don't see the flag.
It creates this really powerful visual hierarchy, and that brings it back to those other characters, the one from China or Thailand or Brazil. So what happens to them?
Well, the study called their inclusion most strategic tokenism.
That's a strong phrase, but given the numbers, it sounds pretty accurate. So what did the tokenism look like on the page?
It was what you might call functional inclusion, not communicative inclusion. Over half of the characters from the expanding circle weren't shown speaking English with other nationalities at all.
So what were they doing?
They were just placed in their home countries to introduce a piece of their traditional cultures directly to the Korean reader. So you might get pictures of someone bowing in the scene about China and they say, Ni hao.
They introduce some cultural item, but they aren't negotiating a business deal in a global English with a Korean student.
Exactly, their job is to be a curator of their own cultures, not a fellow users of English as a global language. The book shows diversities of faces, but they completely fail to show diversity of competent English use.
So let's talk about the ideological message here. The project started with this really progressive goal of global citizenship, but what these kids actually getting is a recycling of some pretty old and problematic ideas.
For sure, the dominance of these Western Caucasian characters as the role model just reinforced the belief that English is the sole property of the West.
And the native speakers from the inner circle are still the gatekeepers.
Right, and that really limits how these young learners think about what English is for. It teaches them that to be good at English, you have to sound and act like someone from the inner circle, instead of seeing it as a flexible tool to talk to anyone from anywhere.
And this all plugs back into the bigger social context in Korea and the whole English fever thing. The source material reminds us that historically after the war,
yes, Korea looked to the advanced West, especially the US, as the model for how to gain economic and political power, and that history created a kind of cultural privileging of Western people and Western cultures inside Korean society.
So the bias we're seeing in these textbooks, the stereotyping of white people as representing this advanced world, is just reinforcing the binary that's already there in the culture.
Exactly. The textbooks are maybe unintentionally legitimizing this unequal relationship through their choices of images.
Oh, it seems like people making materials are just lagging so far behind the official policy. Putting 15 nationalities in the books is a good first step, but if their roles are just tokenistic cultural showcases, it does nothing to challenge those deeply rooted ideas about who the real English speakers are.
It shows that changing the government mandate is only half the fight. The hidden assumption of the content creators, people picking the stock photos or drawing the characters, can completely cancel out the policy's intention.
So they have to do more than just show a diverse face.
They have to show those faces in position of authority as computer expert users of global English. They need to provide real models of that kind of interaction.
So the burden is really on the designers to catch up with the reality of how English is used today. So you need to show a Thai character teaching a class or an Indian character leading a complex conversation.
Not just, showcasing a sari or saying sawadee krap. It has to be more meaningful than that.
Absolutely. And I want to leave you with maybe the most powerful question that came out in the study for me. It's about those unclear inner characters.
The ones who look Western but don't have a specific nationality.
Exactly. The ones who are everywhere. What message does that ambiguity actually send? If the most common and most authoritative person in your English textbook looks Western, but is officially from nowhere, doesn't that make the idea of Western ownership of English even more powerful because it's abstract and you can't even pin it down?
It's a fantastic point. It's almost like you're taking the authority away from a specific country like the US or the UK and just giving it to the vague, mythic idea of Westernness itself.
Which makes it an even more powerful, unchallengeable gatekeeper. It's something for educators and publishers to really think about. Who are your pictures telling these young global citizens the language actually belongs to?
Indeed, because that will frame their entire approach to global communication for years to come.
So thank you for joining our podcast today to have more insight into the hidden messages in these textbooks. So what about you? Do you have the same experience with us? Or what is your point of view on this? Feel free to share with us.
Yeah, we are looking forward to receiving your question as well as comments or feedback so that we could be able to get things prepared for the next talk. Thank you and see you in the next podcast episode.